Hey guys, it's Mike here, and today I'm going to be reviewing The Punisher, the newest Marvel series on Netflix, which is connected to the larger Marvel Cinematic Universe. I've been a big fan of the Netflix Marvel shows since they began with Daredevil, and although they've had some issues with series like Iron Fist and The Defenders, the shows have been good to great overall. The Punisher in particular debuted in the second season of Daredevil, which was excellent, and going into his own series, it was cause for a lot of hype. So does this series live up to that hype? Is The Punisher the series we've all hoped for? Well, in this review, I'm going to break that down. Make sure to subscribe to this channel and enable notifications so you could see all of my content right away when it comes out. So in order to get really into this season and explain my thoughts on it, I'm going to have to get into some spoilers. So if you'd like to watch the season first, you can come back and watch this when it's over. Now the plot of Punisher revolves around Frank Castle, who at the beginning of the series is believed dead and seems to have finally killed off everyone involved in his family's death. As such, he actually gives up on being the Punisher and stops killing people to return to a normal life. However, this doesn't last long as Frank is forced to help out a co-worker at his construction job, saving his life and killing mobsters who intended to kill him. This deed, however, causes him to attract the attention of the hacker Micro, who figured out that Frank is still alive and attempts to recruit him to help him in a situation that affects both of them and ties back to Frank's time in the Marines. However, this is more complex than it seems, and Frank slowly unravels a conspiracy which leads once again back to him and the deaths of his family. So the story of the Punisher was really a lot different than I had gone into it expecting, as I was expecting it to be a story dealing with the Punisher now embracing his role and traveling to different cities punishing criminals. However, aside from some of the first episode, this wasn't really what we got. Instead, the story revolved around a complex conspiracy which involved not only Frank, but a number of other characters. The main plot point revolves around a video covering the torture and murder of an Afghani civilian cop, which was leaked to the Department of Homeland Security by an NSA analyst named Micro, also known as David Lieberman. Those committing these crimes were actually a group of Marines which included Frank Castle, who were doing illegal operations led by a CIA director of covert operations named William Rawlins, also known as Agent Orange. This led to problems for Micro as he was soon discovered and shot by Homeland Security and assumed dead. However, the story didn't die there as Agent Madani with DHS attempts to figure out what happened in Kandahar. This is when Micro discovered that Frank Castle was still alive and began their mutual partnership which would allow Frank to get revenge on those who killed his family, and for Lieberman to return to his own family by exposing the truth. Overall, I thought the main plot was compelling and interesting. Frank's mission wasn't yet finished, and the introduction of Micro and how his story was weaved into Frank's was equally interesting. And this partnership is one of the main driving factors of the show. However, there are also some other subplots during the season which sometimes can interrupt the flow or muddy the narrative. And that's probably one of the biggest detracting elements from this season, but I'll get more into that later. Now, as far as the acting for this season goes, I think it was really good overall. Marvel's Netflix shows have had a good eye for casting talented actors to play these characters on the small screen, and considering how character-driven many of these episodes seem to be, that's a big plus. First off, let's talk about Jon Bernthal as the Punisher. Now, I thought Bernthal was great in season 2 of Daredevil. He brought all the intensity and personality needed to bring the Punisher to life in this new adaptation. He might not be as huge as his comic counterpart has been shown to be, but he definitely looks the part, especially when he finally puts that skulled vest on, and he's totally believable as the character. And this is all the case for season 1 of Punisher, as once again Bernthal brings an intense and emotional performance as Frank Castle, and he's really just full-on badass mode at some points in the show. However, despite him killing people left and right, he's able to remain sympathetic as a character, as we see when he interacts with Micro's family, which is very necessary with a character like the Punisher. It's also clear that Frank is still incredibly affected by the murders of his family as well as his time in Kandahar, and he relives these terrible moments every time he falls asleep or even unconscious. Bernthal does well well with the material he's given here. Up next is Eben Moss-Bachrach as Micro, and I think he also did a great job. When he first appeared, it seemed like he might actually be the villain of the season, but soon as we discovered more about his story, he became a sympathetic character and someone who worked well with Frank. Like Frank, he also had his family taken from him, though his family believes he is dead, and so Micro's motivation is to return to them as well as keeping them safe, and you can really see the struggle he goes through to stay away from them, as well as when Frank starts helping them out around the house. However, Micro isn't this badass like Frank, who can shoot down a bunch of bad guys. He's an analyst who is better at the technical side. In some ways, he serves a similar role to Oracle from Batman, and he and Frank even have their own secret headquarters. But really at the heart of this character is someone who wants to tell the truth and be reunited with his family. And then there's the Department of Homeland Security agent Madani, played by Amber Rose Riva, who serves as the protagonist on the right side of the law. Her former partner was the Afghani cop killed on the tape in Kandahar, and she's trying to find out exactly what went down and what he uncovered. Her character is also good, and she shows early on that she's not a part of any cover-ups and wants to discover the truth by any means possible. And they make her out to be a real badass as well, as she goes into situations guns ready and even tries to take down the Punisher. However, after rising up the ranks and her partner is killed, she starts to see exactly who's behind everything. I think Riva does a good job in this role as Madani. Her character works within the confines of the story, and you can see that she's slowly connecting the dots. And eventually she becomes a help to Frank and Micro, especially toward the end of the season. Another character closely connected to Madani as well as Frank is Billy Russo, played by Ben Barnes. Russo was a Marine who served in Frank's covert unit after being recruited by Henry Rollins, and he was also a friend of Frank's. He also runs the private military corporation known as Anvil. Russo is probably one of the most interesting characters in the series. At first he starts out as someone who we know is Frank's friend, who still believed him to be dead and said he would have even helped Frank during his crusade in Daredevil Season 2. He enters into a relationship with Madani and seems like he might be a good guy, although there still seems to be something that's off about him. However, soon after Russo discovers Frank is still alive, it becomes apparent that Russo is actually working for Henry Rollins, and that he's turned against Frank. As the season goes on, we learn more about Russo, how he stopped Frank from killing Rollins after they were sent into a deadly trap, and how he was given up by his drug-addicted mother as a baby. This gives us a better understanding of his motivations and makes him sympathetic. However, as the series goes along, Russo kills Madani's partner and becomes less sympathetic as he does more henchman tactics. However, the biggest blow comes when we find out that Russo knew that Frank's family would be killed and did nothing to stop it. His final showdown with Frank at the carousel is great, and how Frank deals with him is especially brutal, as he takes the former pretty boy and drags his face through jagged glass. Although Frank leaves him alive so he can live with the pain, this could also serve to set up him becoming the Punisher villain Jigsaw in the next season. And then there's CIA's William Rollins, who really serves as the big bad guy of this season. He's the Agent Orange who recruited Castle and Russo for the illegal operations in Kandahar, which saw them assassinating targets and stuffing the bodies of soldiers killed in action full of heroin to traffic them back to the United States. He was also in line with Frank's superior officer, who is the blacksmith from Daredevil Season 2. And as a villain, he's alright. He's someone who seeks power and will soon be the head of the CIA as his superior is joining the president's cabinet. He's also the one really behind the killing of Frank's family, which was in retaliation for Frank attacking him in Kandahar, and the one who was torturing the cop on Micro's video. But he's not exactly multifaceted as someone like Billy Russo, and serves more of the Bond villain role, and even looks like Blofeld. However, not everything goes smoothly for him, and he definitely gets his comeuppance in an incredibly brutal fashion. As for the action in the series, which many tune in to see, it's actually good when it happens. There's some badass shootouts and some cool moments like Frank shooting someone across the border, but I'm not sure that it's at the level of Daredevil Season 2, although this can be said for most of the Marvel Netflix shows. This series also had a lot less action than you'd expect, and while non-stop action isn't necessary, honestly, it probably could have used some more. And if you're squeamish or don't like graphic violence, this show has a lot of it. It's definitely going for that hard R-rated feeling as far as that goes. As for any real negatives, I'd say the pacing is probably one of the biggest problems. It really takes a lot of time to get where it's going and to ramp up to what many would expect the show to be. Sometimes the forward motion of the main plot will come to a halt as other subplots are being advanced that could really serve to be cut down, or in some cases not even be there. This season really didn't need to be 13 episodes because the story didn't require it, and as a result the show can feel padded. And while I understand what we were being told with the constant flashbacks of Frank seeing his wife while he falls asleep and feeling guilt over their deaths, as well as what he did in Kandahar, it can feel repetitive after a while. This was especially the case with Micro's family. While seeing Frank adjusting to a real life and interacting with real people was nice, it happened far too often, and the thing between Frank and Micro's wife seemed a little bit unnecessary. Also, I didn't really care for the entire subplot with Lewis Wilson played by Daniel Webber. I understand the message they were trying to send about soldiers readapting to society and how PTSD and other factors can cause someone to break, but this entire thing felt like a distraction from the main plot of the season. For most of it, Frank wasn't really involved. It was more connected to Frank's military support group run by his friend Curtis, played by Jason R. Moore, who I also really liked. Karen Page even returns and becomes involved in it at one point, as she's actually targeted by Lewis. However, while hers and Curtis's roles extended beyond the subplot, Lewis doesn't really have any real impact on the ending of the season. So really most, if not all of his story could have been cut from the season and we wouldn't really miss out on it. I feel like if the season had been closer to Defender's length at about 8 to 10 episodes, it would have been a far more focused, far more intense show, which could have delivered the same messages and kept our attention throughout. However, at 13 episodes, the show does suffer a bit. And as far as the ending goes, it feels cyclical, as Frank doesn't end the series as the Punisher, and as someone who accepted that and will continue on with his mission, but rather seems to be finished and scared of what comes next. Obviously, if people like this season enough, and if they have a story to tell, then he'll return as the Punisher for season 2. But I suppose this could serve as a decent ending if the series come to its conclusion now. So in conclusion, I thought Punisher was really good overall, with some good performances by Bernthal, some awesome action when it comes, and it really gets great towards the end. However, the pacing and some subplots drag it down at times. Going in, I was really excited for a Punisher series and the potential it held, and with season 1 done, I'm not entirely satisfied. I probably like it better than Iron Fist and the Defenders, but I wouldn't put it on the level of Daredevil or Jessica Jones. However, if they learn from the mistakes of this season and improve upon everything in season 2, I could see this being in contention for the best Marvel show on Netflix. I'm going to give Punisher season 1 an 8 out of 10. So what did you guys think of this season? Did you like it, and where would you rank it among Marvel series? Let me know down below. Also, if you like this video, subscribe to this channel and enable notifications so you can see all of my content right away when it comes out. And as I always say, stick around, because there's a lot more to come in the future.
Yes, and you'd better subscribe and enable those notifications.